The photograph trembled in Amelia Kent's hands as her brother's wife spoke the words that would change everything. "You cannot stay here through winter, Amelia. With the baby coming and your condition, you would be nothing but a burden we cannot afford to bear." The autumn wind of 1883 swept through the open door of the small homestead outside Santa Fe, New Mexico, carrying with it the scent of dying leaves and the promise of snow to come. Amelia stood in the doorway of what had been her childhood home, now belonging to her brother Samuel and his wife Margaret, feeling the weight of those words settle into her bones like lead. Her condition, as Margaret so coldly called it, was the limp she had carried since childhood when a wagon accident had crushed her left leg. It had healed crooked, leaving her dependent on a walking stick and unable to move with the speed and efficiency that frontier life demanded. Samuel. Amelia turned to her older brother, searching his weathered face for some sign of protest, some indication that he would stand up for his only sister. But Samuel simply looked at his boots, his jaw working silently as Margaret continued to pack Amelia's few belongings into a worn carpet bag. "It is not personal, Amelia," Margaret said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "We simply cannot spare the food or the space. You understand, surely. A woman with your limitations requires constant care during the harsh months, and I will have my hands full with the infant." Amelia's throat tightened, but she refused to let tears fall. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing in this unforgiving land. At 22 years old, she had already buried both parents, watched her brother marry a woman who saw her as little more than an inconvenience, and endured countless pitying looks from the people of Santa Fe. She had worked as a seamstress, contributing what she could to the household, but Margaret had made it clear that gratitude had an expiration date. "Where am I supposed to go?" Amelia asked quietly, her fingers tightening on the handle of her walking stick. "There is a boarding house in Los Alamos," Margaret replied without looking up. "Widow Henderson takes in lodgers. Samuel has arranged for you to have a room there through the winter. You will need to find work to pay your keep come spring, but at least you will have a roof over your head." Los Alamos. The name meant nothing to Amelia, just another small settlement in the New Mexico territory, probably no different from a dozen others scattered across this vast and lonely landscape. She wanted to argue, to demand that her brother honor the memory of their parents who would have been horrified by this exile, but pride stiffened her spine. If Margaret Kent wanted her gone, then she would go. She would not beg. 2 days later, Amelia found herself on a stagecoach heading north, watching the familiar landscape of Santa Fe disappear behind a veil of dust. The other passengers, a merchant and his wife, eyed her walking stick with poorly concealed curiosity but said nothing. The silence suited Amelia fine. She spent the journey staring out the window, trying not to think about the uncertain future that awaited her. Los Alamos turned out to be smaller than she had imagined, a collection of adobe buildings and wooden structures clustered around a central plaza. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks already dusted with early snow that glittered in the afternoon sun. The stagecoach deposited her in front of the general store, and Amelia stood on the dusty street with her carpet bag in one hand and her walking stick in the other, feeling utterly alone. The boarding house was easy to find, a 2-story adobe structure with a hand-painted sign that read, "Henderson's Respectable Lodging." Widow Henderson herself answered the door, a stout woman in her 50s with kind eyes and flour dusting her apron. "You must be Miss Kent," she said warmly. "Your brother sent word ahead. Come in, come in. You look exhausted from your journey." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the street. Widow Henderson explained the house rules, the meal times, and the weekly rate with an efficiency that suggested she had given this speech many times before. When she finally left Amelia alone, the silence pressed in like a physical weight. That first night, Amelia lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of this new town. Somewhere a dog barked. Voices drifted up from the saloon down the street. The wind rattled the shutters. She thought about Margaret's words about being a burden and felt something hard and determined crystallize in her chest. She would prove them wrong. Somehow she would make a life for herself here, even if she had no idea how. Morning brought fresh resolve. Amelia dressed carefully in her best dress, a dark blue wool that she had sewn herself, and pinned her auburn hair into a neat bun. The walking stick felt heavier than usual as she made her way down the stairs to breakfast, where 3 other lodgers were already seated at the long table in the dining room. Widow Henderson made introductions. There was Mr. Phillips, a teacher at the small schoolhouse, Miss Garrett, a spinster who worked at the general store, and Mrs. Chen, an elderly Chinese woman whose son owned the laundry. They all nodded politely at Amelia, and she was grateful that no one asked intrusive questions about why a young woman was staying at a boarding house alone. After breakfast, Amelia ventured out to explore the town and, more importantly, to find work. Her needlework skills were excellent, honed by years of necessity, but Los Alamos was a small town. How many people would need a seamstress? The general store was her first stop. The proprietor, a thin man named Mr. Dalton, listened to her inquiry with a sympathetic expression that Amelia had learned to distrust. "I wish I could help you, miss," he said, "but my wife does all our mending, and truthfully, most folks around here make do with what they have. Times are hard." She tried the hotel next, then the saloon owner's wife, then the blacksmith's family. The answer was always the same, polite refusal wrapped in genuine regret. By midday, Amelia's leg ached from the walking, and her spirits had sunk to match the gray clouds gathering overhead. She was making her way back to the boarding house, trying not to limp too obviously, when a voice called out behind her. "Excuse me, miss. You dropped this." Amelia turned to see a man approaching, holding out the handkerchief that had apparently slipped from her pocket. Her first impression was of height and breadth, a tall man with wide shoulders that stretched the fabric of his worn denim shirt. His face was tanned from years under the sun, with strong features and eyes the color of summer sky. A cowboy hat shaded those eyes, and dust covered his boots and the legs of his trousers. "Thank you," Amelia said, taking the handkerchief. Their fingers brushed briefly, and she felt an unexpected jolt of awareness that made her pull back quickly. "You are new in town," he said. It was not a question. In a place like Los Alamos, strangers were noticed immediately. "I arrived yesterday," Amelia confirmed, clutching her walking stick a little tighter. She waited for his gaze to drop to it, for the familiar flicker of pity or discomfort to cross his face. "I am Owen Quincy," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "I run a cattle ranch about 5 miles west of here. Welcome to Los Alamos, Miss Kent. Amelia Kent. Are you just passing through, Miss Kent, or planning to stay?" "I am staying," Amelia said, lifting her chin slightly. "I am looking for work, actually. I am a seamstress." Owen Quincy's eyes did finally drop then, but not to her walking stick. Instead, he seemed to be thinking, his brow furrowed in concentration. "A seamstress," he repeated slowly. "That is interesting timing. I have been meaning to hire someone to help my housekeeper. Mrs. Alvarez is getting on in years, and she has been complaining about all the mending that piles up. Ranch hands are hard on clothes, you understand, always tearing something or wearing through the knees of their trousers." Amelia's heart began to beat faster. "You are offering me work, if you are interested," Owen said. "The pay would be fair, and Mrs. Alvarez could use the company out at the ranch. She is the only woman there besides the occasional visit from the ranch hands' families. I imagine she would welcome another female presence." It seemed too good to be true, which immediately made Amelia suspicious. "Why would you offer work to a complete stranger?" Owen's lips quirked in something that might have been a smile. "Because you look determined, Miss Kent, and determination goes a long way in this territory. Also, Mrs. Alvarez has been threatening to quit if I do not find her some help, and I cannot run the ranch without her cooking. So really, you would be doing me a favor." Despite herself, Amelia felt her own mouth curve slightly. "That is honest, at least." "I try to be," Owen said. "Would you like to come out to the ranch tomorrow and meet Mrs. Alvarez, see if the situation would suit you? I can send a wagon to pick you up from wherever you are staying." "I am at Widow Henderson's boarding house," Amelia said, still half convinced this was some kind of elaborate joke. But Owen Quincy's blue eyes were steady and serious, and there was nothing mocking in his expression. "9 o'clock tomorrow morning, then," Owen said. "If Mrs. Alvarez approves of you and you approve of the arrangement, we can discuss terms." He tipped his hat again and walked away, leaving Amelia standing on the dusty street feeling as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. One day in Los Alamos, and already her circumstances were changing. She was not sure whether to feel hopeful or more cautious than ever. That evening at dinner, Amelia asked Widow Henderson about Owen Quincy. "Oh, the Quincy Ranch is one of the most successful in the area," the widow said, passing a bowl of potatoes. "Owen's father built it up from nothing, and when he passed 5 years ago, Owen took over. He is a good man, fair to his workers, honest in his dealings." "Why do you ask?" "He offered me work," Amelia said, aware that the other lodgers were listening with interest. "As a seamstress for his ranch." "That would be quite a good position," Mr. Phillips said. "The Quincy Ranch employs about 20 men, I believe. That is steady work." Miss Garrett, the spinster from the general store, leaned forward. "Owen Quincy is also one of the most eligible bachelors in the county," she said with a meaningful look. "Half the unmarried women within 50 miles have set their caps at him." "I am only interested in the work," Amelia said quickly, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. The last thing she needed was to be the subject of gossip before she had even been in town a full week. But that night, as she lay in bed, she could not help thinking about Owen Quincy's steady blue eyes and the way he had not looked at her with pity. It meant nothing, of course. He needed help, and she needed work. It was a simple business arrangement, nothing more. The wagon arrived promptly at 9 the next morning, driven by a young Mexican man who introduced himself as Carlos. He helped Amelia up onto the seat with a courtesy that suggested Owen Quincy ran a respectful operation, and they set off toward the ranch. The landscape opened up as they left town, vast stretches of grassland dotted with juniper and piñon trees. The mountains rose in the distance, and Amelia could see cattle grazing in the far pastures. The ranch house itself was a surprise. A large adobe structure with a covered porch that wrapped around 2 sides and windows that gleamed in the morning sun. Outbuildings spread out behind it, barns and bunkhouses and corrals where horses moved restlessly. Owen was waiting on the porch, and he came down the steps as the wagon rolled to a stop. This time Amelia noticed details she had missed yesterday. The way he moved with easy confidence, the silver buckle on his belt that caught the light, the laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more often than he frowned. "Miss Kent," he said, offering his hand to help her down. "I hope the journey was not too uncomfortable." "It was fine, thank you. Mrs. Alvarez is inside. She is very eager to meet you." The interior of the ranch house was cool and dim after the bright sunshine, with thick walls that would keep out both summer heat and winter cold. The furniture was simple but well made, and colorful woven rugs covered the floor. The smell of fresh bread hung in the air, making Amelia's stomach growl despite the breakfast she had eaten. Mrs. Alvarez turned out to be a short, round woman with silver-streaked black hair and a face that folded into 1,000 wrinkles when she smiled. She looked Amelia up and down with sharp, dark eyes, taking in the walking stick without comment. "So you are the seamstress," she said in accented but clear English. "Can you cook also?" "I can cook basic meals," Amelia said. "Nothing fancy, but I know my way around a kitchen." "Good, good. Owen said you need work and I need help. My hands, they are not what they used to be." Mrs. Alvarez held up gnarled fingers, swollen at the joints. "The mending piles up and these useless hands cannot hold a needle like they should. Can you start soon?" Yes, I suppose I could start immediately if the terms are acceptable." "You would need to live here at the ranch," Owen said, stepping forward. "There is a small room off the kitchen that Mrs. Alvarez uses, and another next to it that has been serving as storage. We could clear it out for you. Board and room included, plus wages of $15 a month." "Does that seem fair?" $15 a month was more than fair. It was generous. Amelia looked between Owen and Mrs. Alvarez, still waiting for the catch, the moment when they would realize what a burden she would be and withdraw the offer. "My leg," she said bluntly, lifting her walking stick slightly. "I was injured as a child. I cannot move quickly and I cannot stand for very long periods without needing to rest, if that will be a problem." "Can you sew?" Mrs. Alvarez interrupted. "Yes. Can you follow a recipe?" "Yes." "Then we will work around the rest," the older woman said with a decisive nod. "I have a chair in the kitchen. You can sit while you work. Owen can move another chair into your room. We manage, yes." Amelia felt something loosen in her chest, something she had not realized was wound so tight. "Yes," she said quietly. "We can manage." "Then it is settled," Owen said, and the smile that spread across his face transformed it from merely handsome to something that made Amelia's breath catch. "Welcome to the Quincy Ranch, Miss Kent." The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Amelia moved her few belongings from the boarding house to the ranch, settled into the small room that Owen and Carlos had cleaned out for her, and began to learn the rhythms of ranch life. She woke before dawn to help Mrs. Alvarez prepare breakfast for the ranch hands who tramped into the kitchen in a steady stream, filling plates with eggs and bacon and fresh tortillas. Then, while Mrs. Alvarez tackled the cooking and cleaning, Amelia sat up at the kitchen table with a basket of mending that seemed to replenish itself magically. She darned socks, patched tears in shirts, reinforced the seams of work trousers, and replaced buttons that had been ripped away by hard work. Her needle flew through the fabric with the ease of long practice, and she fell into a comfortable routine, punctuated by Mrs. Alvarez's cheerful chatter. The older woman told stories about her 7 children, all grown and scattered across the territory, and about her late husband who had been a vaquero for Owen's father. She spoke of Owen, too, with the affection of someone who had known him since childhood. "He was such a serious boy," Mrs. Alvarez said one afternoon as she kneaded bread dough. "Even as a little one, always following his papa around, always wanting to learn. When his papa died, I worried. 25 years old and suddenly responsible for everything. But he stepped up, that boy, worked harder than any 2 men. The ranch hands respect him because he works beside them, not just giving orders from the porch." Amelia listened, her hands never stilling on the shirt she was repairing. She had seen Owen only in passing since she arrived, catching glimpses of him riding out with the men in the morning or returning dusty and exhausted in the evening. He took his meals with the ranch hands in the bunkhouse more often than not, though Mrs. Alvarez grumbled that he should eat better food. "He needs a wife," Mrs. Alvarez said, not for the first time. "A man should not be alone, but he is so particular, that one. Always working, never taking time to court anyone properly." "Perhaps he is married to the ranch," Amelia suggested, keeping her tone light. "Bah, a ranch is not the same as a woman's warmth in winter. You will see when the snows come. This house gets lonely." Amelia said nothing to that. She was in no position to think about warmth or marriage or anything beyond the immediate security of steady work and a roof over her head. Margaret's words still echoed in her mind. A burden. She would not be anyone's burden ever again. But as October faded into November and the air grew crisp with the promise of winter, Amelia found herself increasingly aware of Owen Quincy's presence. He had a habit of appearing in the kitchen in the evenings, standing by the stove with a cup of coffee while he talked with Mrs. Alvarez about the day's work. Sometimes his gaze would drift to where Amelia sat sewing by lamplight, and their eyes would meet for a brief moment before one of them looked away. He was unfailingly polite, always asking if she needed anything, if her room was comfortable, if the work was too much. And he never, ever mentioned her walking stick or the careful way she navigated the house. To Owen Quincy, she was simply the seamstress, a valued member of his household, and Amelia found that revolutionary. The first snow came in mid-November, a light dusting that melted by noon but served as warning of what was to come. Amelia was in the kitchen when Owen came in, stamping his boots, shaking snow from his hat. "Mrs. Alvarez, have we checked that the winter stores are complete?" he asked. "I want to make sure we have everything we need before the real snow hits." "See, everything is ready," the older woman assured him. "We have enough flour and sugar and coffee to last until spring. And Amelia here, she has finished all the mending so the men will have warm clothes." "Good." Owen's gaze found Amelia, and she felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. "You have been worth your weight in gold, Miss Kent. The men have noticed the difference. No more shirts with missing buttons or socks with holes." "I am glad to be useful," Amelia said, meaning it. The past weeks had given her something she had not had in years, a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. "You are more than useful," Owen said quietly, and something in his tone made her look up sharply. But he had already turned back to Mrs. Alvarez, asking about plans for the evening meal, and the moment passed. That night, a blizzard rolled in with shocking speed. Amelia woke to the howl of wind and the rattle of her window shutters. She rose and peered out to see nothing but swirling white, snow coming down so thick and fast that she could not see the barn 50 yards away. By morning, the world had been transformed. Drifts piled up against the buildings, and the ranch hands struggled to reach the animals that needed tending. Owen was out in it all, his tall figure barely visible through the white curtain as he helped dig paths and carry feed to the horses and cattle. The house felt isolated, cut off from everything, and Amelia understood what Mrs. Alvarez had meant about loneliness. But the kitchen was warm, and there was work to do. She helped prepare hot meals for the men who came in shifts to warm up and eat, and she listened to their talk of the weather and the stock and the long winter ahead. 3 days the blizzard raged, and 3 days they were trapped inside except for necessary trips to care for the animals. On the third evening, when the wind finally began to die down, Owen came into the kitchen looking more exhausted than Amelia had ever seen him. His face was wind-burned, his eyes red-rimmed from squinting through snow, and he moved like a man who had pushed himself past all reasonable limits. "Sit," Mrs. Alvarez commanded, pushing him into a chair. "You will collapse if you do not rest." "The cattle," Owen started to protest, but the older woman cut him off. "The men can handle it. You have done enough. Sit and eat." She ladled stew into a bowl and set it in front of him with a force that brooked no argument. Owen ate mechanically, his shoulders slumping with fatigue. Amelia, darning socks at the other end of the table, tried not to stare but found her gaze drawn to him anyway. Mrs. Alvarez, claiming she needed to check on something in the pantry, disappeared with a lack of subtlety that made Amelia suspect matchmaking. The kitchen fell quiet except for the pop and crackle of the fire in the stove. "Does it always come on this hard?" Amelia asked, more to break the silence than because she needed to know. "Sometimes," Owen said, his voice rough with weariness. "Winter in New Mexico can be unpredictable. Mild for weeks, then a storm like this out of nowhere. We lost 2 steers who wandered off before we could get them to shelter. Could have been worse." "You should rest," Amelia said, echoing Mrs. Alvarez's concern. "You look exhausted." "I will." He finished the stew and pushed the bowl away but made no move to rise. Instead, he looked at her, really looked at her, and Amelia felt pinned by that blue gaze. "Can I ask you something, Miss Kent?" "Of course." "Why did you come to Los Alamos?" "You are educated, skilled, clearly from a good family. Why are you here alone?" The question was too close to the bone, but something about the intimacy of the kitchen, the storm-created isolation, made Amelia answer honestly. "I was told I would be a burden," she said quietly, her needle stilling on the sock. "My brother's wife informed me that they could not spare the food or space to keep me through the winter. She said a woman with my condition requires constant care, and they could not afford it." Owen's face darkened. "Your condition?" Amelia gestured to her walking stick leaning against the table. "I am lame, Mr. Quincy. I cannot work as hard as an able-bodied woman. I need help with tasks that others find simple. Margaret was not wrong, not really. I am limited in what I can offer." "That is the biggest load of nonsense I have ever heard," Owen said, and the vehemence in his voice made Amelia's head snap up. "You have been here for weeks, Miss Kent, and you have done the work of 2 people. You are up before dawn, you never complain, and every man on this ranch has noticed the difference your presence has made. A burden. You are one of the most capable people I have ever met." Heat flooded Amelia's face, and she did not know whether it was from embarrassment or pleasure or some confusing mix of both. "You are kind to say so. I am not being kind, I am being truthful." Owen leaned forward, his elbows on the table, and his expression was fierce. "Your sister-in-law was a fool, Miss Kent, a blind fool, and if you ever doubt your worth, remember that you have found a place here. You have made a place here. You are not a burden, you are." He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "You are the warmth I have been missing." The words hung in the air between them, far more intimate than anything that should pass between employer and employee. Amelia could not breathe, could not look away from Owen's face, from the intensity in his eyes that made her heart race. "Mr. Quincy," she whispered, but she did not know how to finish the sentence. "Owen," he said. "My name is Owen, and I would like it very much if you would call me that, Amelia." The sound of her given name on his lips sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with cold. She knew in that moment that something fundamental had shifted between them. This was no longer simply an employment arrangement. This was something else, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "Owen," she said, testing the name, and watched his eyes darken in response. He reached across the table, his work-roughened hand covering hers where it rested on the darning. His palm was warm, calloused from years of labor, and entirely gentle. "I know this is not proper," he said. I know I should not speak this way, but I cannot help it, Amelia. These past weeks, watching you, talking with you, seeing how you fit into this household like you always belonged here. I find myself thinking about you when I should be thinking about cattle and feed and all the other ranch business. I find myself looking for excuses to come into the kitchen just to hear your voice. Tell me I am not alone in this. You are not alone, Amelia said, her voice barely above a whisper. I have been trying not to feel this way, trying to remember my place, but… Your place is here, Owen said firmly. Not as an employee, or it does not have to be. It could be something more if you are willing. I know we have not known each other long. I know by all rights I should court you properly, give you time. But I am a direct man, Amelia, and I see no point in pretending. I care for you, deeply, and if there is any chance you might feel the same. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. For so long, she had believed that no man would ever look at her with anything but pity or duty. The idea that someone like Owen Quincy, strong and capable and respected, could care for her seemed impossible. And yet here he was, his hand covering hers, his eyes full of an emotion that looked very much like hope. I do feel the same, she said, and watched his face transform with joy. But Owen, you need to understand. I will always need the walking stick. I will always move slowly. There are things I cannot do, things I will never be able to do. If you are looking for a wife who can ride out with you or dance at socials or… I am looking for you, Owen interrupted. Exactly as you are. I do not need someone who can ride or dance. I need someone with strength and determination, and a heart big enough to see past what others see as limitations. I need someone who makes this house feel like a home just by being in it. I need you, Amelia. Just you. He stood then, still holding her hand, and pulled her gently to her feet. With her walking stick in one hand and Owen's hand gripping the other, Amelia stood facing him in the warm kitchen with the storm dying down outside. May I kiss you? Owen asked, and the fact that he asked, that he did not simply take, made Amelia love him a little more. Yes, she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and sure and perfect. The kiss was everything Amelia had never dared to hope for. It spoke of patience and passion, of promise and possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said. I know it is too soon, I know I should wait, but marry me, Amelia. Be my wife, make this ranch truly a home. Yes, Amelia said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I will marry you, Mrs. Alvarez chose that moment to return from the pantry, a huge smile on her face that suggested she had been listening from the next room. Finally, she exclaimed, clapping her hands. I have been waiting for this stubborn man to see what was right in front of him. We will have a wedding. The next weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. The storm had broken the back of the early winter, and a period of clear, cold weather settled over the ranch. Owen insisted on doing things properly, despite Amelia's protests that they did not need a fuss. He rode into Los Alamos to speak with the preacher, to arrange for the marriage license, to tell anyone who would listen that he was the luckiest man in New Mexico. Amelia wrote to her brother, informing him of her impending marriage in terms that were polite but cool. She did not expect a reply, and none came. It stung less than she thought it would. She was building a new family now, one based on choice rather than blood. Mrs. Alvarez threw herself into wedding preparations with the enthusiasm of a general planning a campaign. She recruited the ranch hands' wives to help sew a proper wedding dress, a beautiful creation of cream-colored wool that Amelia could never have afforded. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, baked enough food to feed an army, and generally made sure everyone knew that this was an event of great importance. The wedding took place on a Saturday in early December, in the small church in Los Alamos with half the town in attendance. Amelia wore the cream dress and carried a simple bouquet of dried flowers that Mrs. Alvarez had arranged. She walked down the aisle on her walking stick, but with her head held high and her eyes fixed on Owen, who waited at the altar looking at her like she was the answer to every prayer he had ever prayed. The preacher spoke about love and commitment and the covenant of marriage. Owen slipped a gold band onto Amelia's finger, and she did the same for him, her hands trembling slightly. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed her with a tenderness that made several of the ladies in attendance sigh audibly. The reception was held at the ranch, in the big main room where Mrs. Alvarez had set up tables groaning with food. The ranch hands toasted the newlyweds with enthusiasm, and someone produced a fiddle so there could be music. Owen led Amelia in a slow dance, supporting her with an arm around her waist, and she did not care that they moved differently than the other couples. They moved together, and that was all that mattered. As the sun set and the guests began to depart, Owen and Amelia stood on the porch watching the sky turn gold and orange and deep purple. The air was crisp and cold, carrying the scent of wood smoke and coming snow. "Are you happy?" Owen asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Amelia admitted, leaning into his warmth. "A few months ago I thought my life was over. I thought I would always be a burden, always be on the edges of other people's lives. And now you are home," Owen finished. "This is your home, Amelia, our home. And it will always be a place where you are valued and loved, exactly as you are." "You said I would be the warmth you have been missing," Amelia said, remembering that pivotal conversation in the kitchen. "But you are my warmth too, Owen. You saw me when everyone else only saw limitations. You made me believe I could be more than what others told me I was." "You always were more," Owen said, turning to face her fully. "I just had the privilege of recognizing it." They went inside as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, and Mrs. Alvarez tactfully disappeared to her own room, leaving the newlyweds alone. Owen led Amelia to the bedroom he had prepared, where a fire crackled in the hearth, and the bed was piled with quilts. That night, as Owen held her close and the winter wind whispered outside, Amelia understood that she had found something far more valuable than mere shelter from the cold. She had found a partner, a love that saw past surface imperfections to the person beneath. She had found a man who valued her strength rather than focusing on her weakness, who saw her walking stick as just another tool rather than a symbol of inadequacy. Winter deepened around the ranch, bringing more snow and bitter cold. But the house stayed warm, filled with love and laughter, and the everyday magic of two people learning to build a life together. Owen taught Amelia about the ranch business, insisting that as his wife she should understand every aspect of their livelihood. She learned about cattle and horses, about the rhythm of the seasons, about the dozens of decisions that went into running a successful operation. In return, Amelia brought order and beauty to the house. She sewed curtains for the windows and quilts for the beds. She helped Mrs. Alvarez with the cooking, discovering a talent for baking bread that rivaled the older woman's. She created a home that the ranch hands spoke of with admiration, and that Owen returned to each evening with eager anticipation. They had their challenges, of course. There were days when Amelia's leg pained her terribly, when the old injury ached with the cold and she struggled to get out of bed. On those days, Owen carried her to the kitchen, settled her in a chair by the fire, and brought her whatever she needed without a word of complaint. His matter-of-fact care, free of pity or resentment, helped Amelia accept her limitations without shame. There were also moments of fear, times when Amelia wondered if Owen would come to regret his choice, if he would eventually see her as the burden Margaret had named her. But Owen seemed to sense those doubts, and he addressed them with words and actions that left no room for misunderstanding. "You are my wife," he said one snowy evening as they sat together by the fire, his arm around her and her head on his shoulder. "My partner in all things. When you hurt, I hurt. When you triumph, I triumph. That is what marriage means, Amelia. We are in this together, and nothing about you is a burden to me." Christmas came, and Mrs. Alvarez outdid herself with a feast that had the ranch hands singing her praises for days. Owen gave Amelia a beautiful carved wooden box for her sewing supplies, and she gave him a new shirt she had made, embroidered with his initials at the cuff. They attended the Christmas service in Los Alamos, standing together in the candlelit church while snow fell softly outside. As the year turned from 1883 to 1884, Amelia reflected on the incredible transformation her life had undergone. 12 months ago, she had been living in her brother's house, enduring Margaret's barely concealed contempt and wondering what would become of her. Now she was Amelia Quincy, wife of a respected rancher, mistress of a home that ran smoothly thanks to her efforts, and deeply, completely loved. In February, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. The realization came gradually, a missed monthly course followed by morning nausea and a strange exhaustion that no amount of sleep seemed to cure. Mrs. Alvarez guessed before Amelia had confirmed it herself, and the older woman's face split into a grin of pure delight. "A baby," she exclaimed. "Oh, this is wonderful news. Owen will be so happy." But Amelia felt fear twist in her stomach alongside the new life growing there. Childbirth was dangerous for any woman, but for someone with her physical limitations, the risks multiplied. What if something went wrong? What if her body, already imperfect, could not handle the demands of pregnancy and birth? She told Owen that evening, the words stumbling over themselves in her nervousness. He listened in silence, his face unreadable, and Amelia's heart sank. But then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A child," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Our child. Amelia, this is the greatest gift you could give me." "Are you not worried?" Amelia asked against his chest. "I am not built for this, Owen, my body." "Your body is strong," Owen interrupted firmly. "You are strong, and we will make sure you have the best care possible. We will bring in a doctor from Santa Fe if necessary, or a midwife, whoever you need. You will not face this alone." True to his word, Owen arranged for the best midwife in the territory, a competent woman named Mrs. Rodriguez who traveled to the ranch twice a month to check on Amelia's progress. The midwife examined her thoroughly and pronounced her healthy, with no reason to expect complications. "Your leg will not affect childbirth," Mrs. Rodriguez assured her. "The injury is to your lower limb, not your hips or your womb. You may find the later months uncomfortable because of the extra weight, but that is true for all women. Rest when you need to, eat well, and do not let worry consume you." As spring came and the snow melted, Amelia's belly swelled with their growing child. Owen became almost comically protective, insisting she rest frequently and forbidding her from lifting anything heavier than a teacup. Mrs. Alvarez clucked over her like a mother hen, preparing special foods designed to strengthen her and the baby. The ranch hands, tough men who spent their days wrestling cattle and breaking horses, treated Amelia with a gentleness that brought tears to her eyes. They tipped their hats with exaggerated courtesy, helped her navigate steps without being asked, and generally behaved as though she were made of spun glass. Summer brought heat that made Amelia grateful for the thick adobe walls that kept the house cool. She spent the long afternoon sewing tiny clothes, her needle creating impossibly small stitches on shirts and gowns meant for an infant. Owen would come in from the day's work and sit with her, his large hand resting on her belly to feel the baby kick. "Strong," he would say with satisfaction. "Takes after the mother." "Or the father," Amelia would reply, covering his hand with hers. They talked about names, debated whether they hoped for a son or a daughter, planned how they would arrange the small room next to their bedroom as a nursery. These conversations filled the house with anticipation and joy, and Amelia found herself looking forward to the birth with more excitement than fear. In late August, as the summer heat began to break and the first hints of autumn touched the air, Amelia's labor began. It started as a dull ache in her back that she tried to ignore, not wanting to alarm anyone unnecessarily. But by evening, the pain had intensified and moved to her belly, and she could no longer pretend nothing was happening. "Owen," she said quietly, interrupting his conversation with one of the ranch hands, "I think it is time." She had never seen a man move so fast. Owen sent Carlos racing to fetch Mrs. Rodriguez, ushered Amelia to their bedroom with Mrs. Alvarez fussing behind them, and generally looked like he might either explode or faint at any moment. "You need to breathe," Amelia told him with a weak laugh as another contraction seized her. "I am breathing," Owen protested, though his face had gone pale. "Are you all right? What can I do?" "You can stay with me," Amelia said, gripping his hand. "Just stay with me." Mrs. Rodriguez arrived within the hour, her calm competence immediately taking charge of the situation. She examined Amelia, pronounced everything progressing normally, and settled in for what she said could be a long night. It was a long night. The contractions came in waves, each one stronger than the last, and Amelia learned that no amount of physical strength or determination could make childbirth easy. She gripped Owen's hand until she thought she might break his fingers, and he never once complained. He stayed by her side throughout, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, whispering encouragement, being the anchor she needed in the storm of pain. Dawn was breaking when Mrs. Rodriguez finally said, "One more push, Amelia. One more and you will meet your baby." Amelia pushed with every ounce of strength she possessed, and suddenly the pressure eased and a thin wail filled the room. Mrs. Rodriguez held up a squirming, red-faced infant, and tears streamed down the midwife's face. "A boy," she announced. "A healthy baby boy." Owen made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, and Amelia felt her own tears flowing freely. Mrs. Rodriguez cleaned and wrapped the baby, then placed him in Amelia's arms. He was tiny and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that would probably turn blue like his father's. "Hello," Amelia whispered, touching the baby's impossibly soft cheek. "Hello, little one, I am your mama." "And I am your papa," Owen said, his voice thick with emotion as he leaned over them both. "Welcome to the world, son." They named him Oliver, after Owen's father, and the ranch celebrated his arrival with the enthusiasm usually reserved for a successful cattle drive. The ranch hands took turns peeking in at the new baby, bringing small gifts they had carved or purchased in town. Mrs. Alvarez cooked for days, making sure Amelia had plenty of nourishing food to help her recover. Amelia's fears about not being able to care for an infant proved unfounded. She adapted quickly, learning to nurse Oliver while seated comfortably, figuring out how to carry him in a sling that left her hands free for her walking stick, creating a system that worked for their particular needs. Owen helped with everything, changing nappies and walking the floor with Oliver when he cried at night, being a true partner in parenthood. The months that followed were exhausting and exhilarating. Amelia watched Oliver grow from a tiny newborn to a chubby infant who smiled at the sound of his father's voice and reached for his mother's face with curious hands. The ranch prospered under Owen's management, and their home filled with the sound of a baby's laughter. When Oliver was 6 months old, Amelia received a letter from Santa Fe. It was from her brother Samuel, the first communication she had had from him since announcing her marriage. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, unsure what to expect. The letter was brief and uncomfortable in its formality, but its message was clear. Margaret had passed away during childbirth, taking the baby with her. Samuel wrote that he regretted the way Amelia had been treated, that he should have stood up for his sister, that he hoped she had found happiness in Los Alamos. Amelia read the letter twice, processing the complicated mix of emotions it stirred. She felt genuine sorrow for Margaret's death, for the loss of a life cut tragically short. But she also felt relief that she would never have to face that woman's cruelty again, and guilt for feeling that relief. "Bad news?" Owen asked, coming into the kitchen where she sat with the letter. "My sister-in-law died," Amelia said, "in childbirth. My brother wrote to tell me." Owen's face softened with sympathy. He sat beside her, pulling her close. "I am sorry, that must be difficult news to receive." "It is strange," Amelia admitted. "I feel sad, but also. She was the one who sent me away, who called me a burden. And now she is gone, and I am here, happy and safe with you and Oliver. It feels wrong to be glad my life turned out this way." "It is not wrong to be grateful for what you have," Owen said gently. "You can mourn her death and still recognize that her treatment of you was unjust. Both things can be true. My brother says he regrets what happened. He wants to know if he can meet you and Oliver." "What do you want?" Owen asked. "This is your decision, Amelia. If you want to see him, he is welcome. If you do not, that is also acceptable." Amelia thought about it carefully, weighing the past against the possibility of reconciliation. Finally, she said, "I think I would like to see him, not for his sake but for mine. I want him to see that I am not a burden. I want him to see what I have built here, what we have built together. Is that petty of me?" "It is human," Owen said, kissing her forehead. "Write and invite him. We will show him that his sister is doing more than fine. She is thriving." Samuel came in the spring, arriving on the stagecoach looking older and grayer than Amelia remembered. She greeted him at the ranch house, Oliver balanced on her hip and Owen standing supportively beside her. Samuel took in the prosperous ranch, the comfortable home, the healthy baby, and the obvious love between Amelia and Owen, and his face crumpled. "I am so sorry," he said, the words tumbling out. "Amelia, I am so sorry. I should never have let Margaret send you away. I should have stood up for you. I have been a terrible brother." "Yes, you were," Amelia said quietly, and Samuel flinched. "But I have forgiven you, Samuel. Not because what you did was acceptable, but because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you, and because something wonderful came from that terrible situation. If you had not sent me away, I would never have come to Los Alamos. I would never have met Owen or built this life. So in a strange way, I am grateful." Samuel stayed for 3 days, getting to know Owen and falling in love with his nephew. He apologized repeatedly, and Amelia accepted his apologies with grace. When he left, they parted on better terms than they had been in years, with promises to write and visit again. "You handled that well," Owen told her after Samuel's departure. "You are a remarkable woman, Amelia Quincy." "I am your wife," Amelia corrected with a smile. "That makes me remarkable by association." "No," Owen said, pulling her into his arms. "You were remarkable long before you met me. I just had the wisdom to recognize it. The years that followed were full and rich." Oliver grew into a sturdy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determination. When he was 3, he was joined by a sister, Emma, who had her mother's auburn hair and her father's sunny disposition. 2 years after that came another son, Adam, who was quieter than his siblings but equally beloved. Amelia learned to manage her growing family with the same efficiency she had once brought to her sewing. Her walking stick remained a constant companion, but it became simply part of who she was rather than a limitation. The children grew up knowing their mother moved differently than other women, but they never saw her as weak or incapable. How could they, when she could discipline with a look, soothe any hurt with a hug, and create magic from flour and sugar and love? Owen's ranch continued to prosper, becoming one of the most successful in the territory. But he never measured his success in cattle or acreage. His true wealth, he said often, was the woman who had transformed his house into a home and the children who filled it with laughter. Mrs. Alvarez eventually retired from her duties, moving to live with one of her daughters in Santa Fe. But she visited often, delighting in watching her grandchildren grow. The ranch hands came and went over the years, but the respect and affection they showed Amelia remained constant. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen took Amelia up to the ridge overlooking the ranch. It was December again, the world covered in fresh snow that sparkled in the afternoon sun. They stood together, his arm around her waist, looking down at the home they had built. "You remember what you told me the first time we really talked?" Owen asked. "That your sister-in-law said you would be a burden in winter." "I remember," Amelia said softly. "She was wrong about everything," Owen said, turning her to face him. "You have never been a burden, not for a single day. You have been my warmth through every winter, my strength through every challenge, my joy through every season. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Amelia. I hope you know that." "I do," Amelia said, reaching up to touch his face. "Just as you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You saw me, Owen, when everyone else looked through me or past me. You made me believe I was worth loving." "You always were worth loving," Owen said. "I was just the lucky man who got to prove it to you." They kissed there on the ridge, the cold air forgotten in the warmth they created together. Below them, smoke rose from the chimney of their home, where their children played and dinner cooked and life went on in all its beautiful, ordinary glory. Amelia thought about the girl she had been 10 years ago, standing on the street in Los Alamos with a carpetbag and a walking stick, and no idea what the future held. She had been so afraid, so certain that Margaret was right and she would always be an unwanted burden. How wrong those fears had been. How spectacularly, wonderfully wrong. She was not a burden. She was a wife, a mother, a partner in building something lasting and good. She was the warmth in the winter cold, the heart of a home, the beloved woman who had found her place in the world. And that place was here in Owen's arms, on this snowy ridge overlooking the ranch where they would grow old together. "Let us go home," Owen said, and Amelia smiled because yes, that was exactly right. They were going home, to the life they had created together, to the children waiting for them, to the future that stretched out bright and promising before them. Years continued to pass in the rhythm of ranch life. Oliver grew into a capable young man who worked alongside his father, learning everything Owen could teach him about running the ranch. He was 18 now, tall and strong, with plans to court the daughter of a neighboring rancher. Emma, at 15, had inherited her mother's skill with a needle and was already making beautiful quilts that won prizes at the county fair. Adam, at 13, was quieter than his siblings, but showed a talent for working with horses that impressed even the most experienced ranch hands. Amelia watched her children grow with a mixture of pride and bittersweet awareness of time's passage. Her hair now showed threads of silver, and the lines around her eyes had deepened from years of smiling. Her leg still required the walking stick, and some days it ached more than others, but she had long since made peace with her limitations. They were simply part of who she was, no more defining than the color of her eyes or the sound of her laugh. Owen, too, showed the marks of time. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and his face bore the weathered look of a man who had spent decades under the sun. But he was still strong, still capable, and still looked at Amelia with the same love that had filled his eyes on their wedding day. They sat on the porch one evening in late summer, watching the sun set over the ranch they had built together. The children were inside, arguing good-naturedly about something, and the sound of their voices drifted out through the open windows. "Oliver wants to propose to the Bennett girl," Owen said. "He asked my blessing this morning." "What did you tell him?" Amelia asked, though she already knew. "I told him yes, of course. Sarah is a fine young woman. She will make him happy." Owen reached over and took Amelia's hand. "It is strange to think of our boy getting married. It seems like just yesterday he was the tiny infant we were so afraid of breaking." "Time moves faster than we expect," Amelia agreed. "Soon we will have grandchildren running around, and you will spoil them terribly," Owen said with a smile. "Of course I will. That is what grandmothers are for." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of partnership and deep understanding. Amelia thought about the life they had built, about the family they had created, about the love that had sustained them through challenges and triumphs alike. "You ever think about how different things might have been?" she asked. "If Margaret had not sent me away, if I had never come to Los Alamos." "Sometimes," Owen admitted. "And every time I am grateful things happened the way they did. I hate that you were hurt, Amelia. I hate that anyone ever made you feel less than the extraordinary person you are. But if all of that had not happened, we might never have found each other, and a life without you is unimaginable to me." "You saved me," Amelia said softly. "When you said I would be the warmth you had been missing, you gave me back my sense of worth. You showed me that I could be valued, that my limitations did not define me. You gave me a home and a family and a purpose. You saved my life, Owen." "No," Owen said, squeezing her hand. "We saved each other. You think I was not lonely before you came. You think this ranch was not just a place I worked myself to exhaustion. You brought life to this place, Amelia. You brought warmth and joy and meaning. If I gave you anything, it was only what you gave me in return. We saved each other." Tears pricked Amelia's eyes, but they were happy tears. She leaned her head on Owen's shoulder, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady presence that had been her anchor for so many years. Inside, Emma called out that dinner was ready. Owen helped Amelia to her feet, handing her the walking stick that was never far from reach. Together they walked into the house, into the noise and warmth of their family, into the life they had built from nothing but determination and love. Oliver's wedding took place the following spring, a joyous occasion that brought together people from all over the county. Amelia watched her firstborn son pledge his life to Sarah Bennett and felt the sweet ache of a mother's pride. Owen cried unashamedly during the ceremony, and Amelia loved him all the more for it. The newlyweds built a small house on the far edge of the ranch, and Sarah proved to be as capable and hardworking as Amelia had suspected. Within a year, she was pregnant with their first child, and the cycle of life continued its eternal turn. Amelia's first grandchild, a boy named William, arrived on a crisp October morning. When Oliver placed the baby in her arms, Amelia was transported back to the moment when she had first held Oliver, when the world had been full of fear and wonder. Now it was full of joy and gratitude for the gift of watching her family grow. Emma married 2 years later, a young rancher from a neighboring county who adored her completely. Adam showed no interest in marriage yet, preferring to spend his time with the horses he loved. Amelia did not push him. Each child would find their path in their own time. As Amelia entered her 50s, her body began to show more signs of age. The walking stick became more necessary, and some days she needed to rest more often than she once had. But her spirit remained strong, and her love for Owen and their family never wavered. They had more grandchildren now, a lively collection of boys and girls who filled the ranch house with laughter during visits. Amelia sewed clothes for each of them, just as she had for her own children, putting love into every stitch. She told them stories of the old days, of how she had come to Los Alamos with nothing but a carpetbag and a hope for survival, and how she had found so much more. Owen remained her constant companion, her partner in all things. They still sat on the porch most evenings, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. His hair had gone completely white, and he moved a little slower than he once had, but he was still the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. "We have had a good life," Owen said one evening, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing. "The best life," Amelia agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." "You have any regrets?" he asked. Amelia thought about the question carefully. There were sorrows in her past, certainly. The loss of her parents, the painful exile from her brother's home, the physical challenges that had shaped her existence. But regrets? "No, I regret nothing," she said firmly. "Every hardship led me here to you, to this life we have built. I would not change a single moment if it meant losing what we have." "Neither would I," Owen said, raising her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. "You have been the greatest blessing of my life, Amelia Quincy. My warmth in every winter, my joy in every season. I love you more today than I did on our wedding day, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." "And I love you," Amelia said, her voice thick with emotion. "Always and forever, Owen. You are my home." They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a party that seemed to include half the territory. Friends and family gathered at the ranch, filling the house and spilling out onto the grounds. There was food and music and dancing, and toasts that praised the couple who had built not just a successful ranch, but a true family. Oliver gave a speech that had everyone laughing and crying, talking about how his parents had shown him what real love looked like, how their partnership had taught him to respect and cherish his own wife. Emma sang a song she had written for the occasion, her clear voice bringing tears to many eyes. Adam, never comfortable with public speaking, simply hugged both his parents and whispered that he hoped to be half as good a person as they had taught him to be. As the party wound down and the guests departed, Amelia and Owen found themselves once again on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The sounds of their children and grandchildren cleaning up inside were a comforting backdrop to the peaceful evening. 25 years, Owen mused. It has gone so fast. "And yet it feels like I have always known you," Amelia said. "I can barely remember what my life was like before you." "Lonely," Owen said. "That is what my life was before you, lonely and purposeless beyond the daily work." "You gave me a reason to build something lasting, Amelia. You gave me a future worth working for." "We gave each other that," Amelia corrected gently. "Everything we have, we built together." More years passed, bringing both joys and sorrows as life always does. They lost old friends and gained new grandchildren. The ranch continued to thrive under the management of Owen and Oliver working together. Emma's quilts became famous throughout the territory, and Adam eventually married a quiet woman who loved horses as much as he did. Amelia's health remained generally good despite the challenges of age and her old injury. There were difficult days when the pain was worse, but Owen was always there to help, just as he had promised decades ago. He carried her when she could not walk, held her when she hurt, and loved her through every challenge. They grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. The passion of youth had mellowed into something even stronger, a bond forged through decades of partnership and unwavering support. They knew each other's thoughts, finished each other's sentences, and could communicate entire conversations with a single glance. On their 30th anniversary, Owen surprised Amelia with a gift that took her breath away. He had commissioned a painting of the ranch, a beautiful rendering that showed the house and the land and the mountains in the distance. But he had added something special. In the foreground, painted with loving detail, were the figures of a man and a woman standing together, his arm around her shoulders, her walking stick in one hand. It was them, captured in art, a testament to the life they had built together. "So we never forget," Owen said as Amelia stared at the painting through tears. "So our grandchildren and their children know the story of how we found each other. So no one ever forgets that love sees past all limitations, that true partnership is built on respect and admiration, and that the greatest treasure in life is finding someone who sees you for exactly who you are and loves you all the more for it." "It is perfect," Amelia whispered. "You are perfect. This life is perfect." They hung the painting in the main room of the house, where everyone who visited could see it and ask about the story behind it. And Amelia never tired of telling that story, of how she had been told she would be a burden, and how a cowboy named Owen Quincy had said she would be the warmth he had been missing, because that was the truth of their life together. She had been his warmth, just as he had been hers. They had heated each other through the coldest winters and the hardest times. They had been each other's shelter and strength, each other's joy and purpose. As they moved into their 70s, still living on the ranch they loved, surrounded by children and grandchildren and now great-grandchildren, Amelia often reflected on the incredible journey of her life. From that frightened young woman standing on the street in Los Alamos with no idea what the future held, to this contented matriarch presiding over a family built on love and respect, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. But it was not really a miracle, Amelia knew. It was the result of choosing to believe in herself, of accepting Owen's offer of partnership, of working hard every single day to build something lasting and good. It was the result of love given and received, of challenges faced together, of a commitment that had never wavered even when times were difficult. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching yet another sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Owen turned to Amelia with a serious expression. "What is it?" she asked, recognizing the look that meant he had something important to say. "I want you to promise me something," Owen said. "If I go first, I want you to promise me that you will not grieve too much, that you will remember the joy we had, not the pain of parting, that you will know with absolute certainty that every single day I spent with you was a gift beyond measure." "Owen," Amelia protested, not wanting to think about a world without him. "Promise me," he insisted, taking both her hands in his. "Promise me you will remember that you were never a burden, that you brought nothing but light and warmth into my life. That loving you was the easiest and best thing I ever did." "I promise," Amelia said, tears streaming down her face. "But you have to promise me the same. If I go first, you have to remember how happy we were. You have to promise to keep living, to keep loving, to keep finding joy." "I promise," Owen said, pulling her close, "though I cannot imagine this world without you in it. We will face that when we must," Amelia said, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. For now, we have this moment, and that is enough. They celebrated their 35th anniversary, surrounded by so much family that the ranch house could barely contain them all. There were 4 grandchildren now married with children of their own, creating a third generation that filled Amelia and Owen with profound gratitude. The great-grandchildren ran wild through the house where their grandparents had been raised, and the sound of their laughter was the sweetest music imaginable. "Look at what we made," Owen said to Amelia as they surveyed the chaos of the anniversary celebration. "Not just children, but a whole family tree branching out into the future. We did that, Amelia. We created all of this." "We did," Amelia agreed, squeezing his hand, "and it will continue long after we are gone. That is the real legacy, Owen, not the ranch or the property, but this family we built. These people who know how to love because we showed them." As the years continued their relentless march forward, Owen and Amelia made sure their children knew all the stories, all the family history, all the lessons they had learned over a lifetime together. They wanted nothing lost, nothing forgotten. The story of how they met, of how love had conquered prejudice and limitation, of how 2 people had built a life together against all odds, that story needed to be preserved. Emma wrote it all down, filling journals with her parents' words and memories. She promised that the story would be passed down through every generation, that no one would forget how Amelia Kent had come to Los Alamos with nothing but hope and determination, and how Owen Quincy had seen her true worth when others saw only limitation. On their 40th anniversary, they had a quiet celebration, just the 2 of them and their children. The grandchildren and great-grandchildren would visit later, but this day was for the core family to honor the couple who had started it all. Oliver gave a toast that had everyone in tears. "You showed us what real love looks like," he said, raising his glass. "Not the easy love of youth, though you had that too, but the hard love that perseveres through challenge and change. You taught us that true partnership means supporting each other's strengths and compensating for each other's weaknesses without resentment. You taught us that love is not about finding someone perfect, but about choosing someone and deciding to see them as perfect for you. Thank you, Ma and Pa, for everything you gave us, for everything you taught us, for everything you built." "Hear, hear," Emma and Adam chorused, and they all drank to 40 years of marriage and love. That night, alone in their bedroom, Owen and Amelia lay together in the bed they had shared for 4 decades. Age had marked both of them, their bodies no longer young or strong, but their love had only grown deeper with time. 40 years, Amelia marveled. "When I walked into Los Alamos all those years ago, I never imagined this. I thought my life was over, Owen. I thought I would be alone and unwanted forever. And instead, I found you. I found everything." "We found each other," Owen corrected, his arm around her as she nestled against his side. "And we built this beautiful life together. I want you to know, Amelia, that even if I could go back and change things, make your life easier, take away the challenges you faced, I would not do it. Because all of it led to us, to this moment, to 40 years of being the luckiest man alive." "I love you," Amelia said simply. "I have loved you from the moment you said I would be the warmth you had been missing. You saw me, truly saw me, and that changed everything." "I love you too," Owen replied, "and I always will in this life and whatever comes after." They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had done for 40 years, as they would continue to do for as many years as God granted them. And if there was a better definition of home than this, Amelia could not imagine it. Home was not a place. It was a person. It was this man who had chosen her, who had loved her, who had built a life with her. Owen was her home, just as she was his. The years continued, bringing them into their 80s, a remarkable age for that time and place. Their bodies were frail now, their movements slow, but their minds remained sharp, and their love undiminished. They spent most of their time on the porch, wrapped in blankets even in summer, watching the ranch continue its operations under Oliver's capable management. Great-grandchildren who were now teenagers would visit, eager to hear stories of the old days. Amelia would tell them about arriving in Los Alamos with nothing, about meeting their great-grandfather, about building a life from hope and hard work. And Owen would add details, his voice soft but sure, talking about the day he saw Amelia on the street and knew somehow that she was meant to be his. Was it really love at first sight? One great-granddaughter asked, her eyes wide with romance. It was recognition at first sight, Owen said thoughtfully. I looked at her and recognized someone brave and strong and determined, someone who had been knocked down but refused to stay down, someone I wanted to know better. The love came quickly after, but it started with recognition and respect. And you were not bothered by her walking stick? Another great-grandchild asked with the bluntness of youth. I noticed it, Owen said honestly. But it did not define her any more than my hat defined me. It was just a tool she used, part of who she was. And who she was, that was everything I had been searching for without knowing it. These conversations, these moments of passing down wisdom and history, became precious to both of them. They knew time was short, that every day was a gift. They made sure their family understood what mattered: love, respect, partnership, commitment. Those values had sustained them through 4 decades of marriage, and they wanted those values to continue shaping their family long after they were gone. On a warm autumn day, much like the day they had met so many years ago, Owen and Amelia sat on the porch watching the leaves turn gold. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and peaceful, a testament to a lifetime of hard work and good management. It has been a good life, Owen said, not for the first time. The best life, Amelia agreed, also not for the first time. They sat in comfortable silence, their hands clasped together, watching the world they had built continue its eternal rhythms. And if there was more to say, they did not need words for it. After 45 years together, they spoke a language that required no voice, a language of shared glances and gentle touches and profound understanding. The sun set slowly, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. And as darkness gently claimed the day, Amelia and Owen remained on the porch, together as they had always been, as they would always be. Two souls who had found each other against all odds, who had built something lasting and beautiful, who had proven that love sees no limitations, only possibilities. Their story would live on in the family they had created, in the ranch they had built, in the values they had instilled. But more than that, their story would live on as proof that every ending can be a beginning, that being told you are a burden can lead to becoming someone's greatest treasure, and that true love really can conquer all. Amelia looked at Owen, his face lined with age but still dear beyond measure, and smiled. He smiled back, his eyes still that same summer blue she had first noticed all those years ago. And in that moment, surrounded by the life they had built together, they both knew with absolute certainty that they had been blessed beyond measure. She had been told she would be a burden in winter, but Owen had said she would be the warmth he had been missing. And together, they had created a lifetime of warmth that would last long after winter had claimed them both. Together, they had built not just a home or a family, but a legacy of love that would endure for generations. And as the stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky, Amelia and Owen sat together on the porch of the ranch they loved, holding hands and holding hearts, content in the knowledge that they had lived well and loved even better. Their story was complete, perfect in all its imperfections, a testament to the transformative power of seeing past limitations to the limitless potential of love.